How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. So we're glad to be back with everybody. Today, Lori's organizing her closet, so we're going to work with her on that.
I'm moving back in. I moved from two closets down to one, and it's like a tiny closet. So I'm trying to figure it out because I don't want to put a lot of money into this place because we're either going to build or do something with, right? And this will be, once we fix this property back up, it'll be renting it out again, right? So I'm not going to put like a whole closet system in here because I don't know what the next person's going to want, right? So I'm trying to make it work for me right now.
Well,
And
that's what we're all about, is making it work for us.
yeah, that's what you do, right? So I'm thinking that like I can put my pants like up there and I can see them
Yeah.
out sticking out there. And that way I can see them. And yeah, I don't know. Like I'm gonna get one of those extender rods too to hang down, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So make more room. I don't know. But I am like, my husband makes jokes. You are the most like disorganized, organized person I know.
Me too, though. Honestly, if you asked me where something's at, I could tell you. But if you asked me to I- yeah, I don't know how to describe it, like how to explain it. But yeah, the most organized, disorganized person ever. But it's
I mean,
crazy.
it's my problem is that I will figure something out and then find a way for something else to work a better way and I'll fix it again. And then I just learned this. I just figured this out. Why is this changing again?
Right. Keep him guessing, keep him on his toes.
I try. I try. Trust me. But lots of things. I try. But anyway, that's what we do, right? In life, we keep organizing. We keep trying to make sense of the chaos and everything. And either it works or it doesn't work. I don't know. That's me. I'm always in mode of, all right, we've got this. We got a plan. We're going to move forward with the plan. If we have to adapt from the plan, that's perfectly okay. That's what I teach my clients too. But that's how I work with life in general.
Right. There's times when, compartmentalizing helps us be able to move through something that's really difficult. We think about the times where we have challenges and things like that in life. And the moments, I think you said it earlier, the moments when you want to cover your head up in blanket, put a blanket over it and just tune it all out, have to compartmentalize, especially I think as mothers, you have to compart. I'm going to keep messing that up.
Keep saying it. Compartmentalize, compartmentalize, compartmentalize.
Like, people do, you know,
I,
and now
I,
you
I
can't
mess
say it.
with them all the time.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that we learn as women is we put everything in these nice little boxes and so that we can move through the hard things in life. And I know we've talked a couple of times about like your trauma I've been through and things like that. So it's interesting that there's that parallel. You can always, and it's funny because my kids get mad at me because they're like, Mom, I don't need a life lesson in this. But I'm like, but there's one here and it's so good. You need to hear it. And they hate me
You
for
always
it.
find life lessons and things, don't you? Like
Yes.
she will show
Yes.
a video of something and she'll be like, all right, and this is what I learned in this.
Yeah. My sister-in-law tells me all the time, she's, why, how is it that you just take these things and you just make them make sense more than other people? And I was like, I don't know. It just comes to me. But that's one of the ways that I've been able to shift some of the things in my life. For me, a perfect example, let me tell you a little bit about something that was traumatic for me is when I first left my kid's dad, that was a very toxic relationship. And there was a lot of things that happened in that relationship that made me start to doubt myself and not trust myself. And so when I left him, that in and of itself, any woman that steps out of a toxic relationship and kind of starts to reestablish her life, that alone can be traumatic. They talk about, yeah, they talk about big T trauma, little T trauma. So I think that's a middle of the road trauma.
No, it's a big one. It's big. I mean,
Yeah.
and I want to say kudos. I do. I want to say kudos to you for stepping out and
Yeah.
brave enough and not thinking that, oh, I have to stay here and subject myself to this kind of treatment. I'm worth more than this.
Yeah. And it took a long time to get me there. But when I got there, the aftermath of it, you don't think about that as much when you're in the middle of that process and everything. And just to get up and function on my day-to-day basis, I had to pack everything away in a box. All the big feelings that I was having, all the fears and all of that, I had to pack it away until I could actually start to unpack it and organize it in a way that was going to work for me. And that's where my personal growth and my spirituality in a lot of ways really started to grow deeper. And so I think that is when you have a moment like that in your life and you're at a crossroads, because that's almost what it feels like, right? Is you can look at the past of, I can stay in this relationship and I can make this work however it's going to work, right? Or lack thereof. And I can force myself to be content with this, right? Or I can step into the unknown and I can face all these things that are scary. I didn't know at the time, I didn't know how I was going to cover rent and bills, how it was going to look like to co parent with this person when I was still so hurt from it and wounded. How was I going to pick up all the pieces of that life I thought I was going to have? Because you do grieve these things. You grieve the life that you thought you were going to have with this person, with your children, that kind of thing. And I think that just that little nugget, the fact that we grieve these things gets overlooked so much, so often. Women think that they should just be able to pick it up, play tough, and just move on, and without really grieving what they're walking away from, what they're giving up. And I think that's the traumatic part of all of it, right? We deny ourselves of all these feelings and things like that. We minimize how it impacts us. And that gets stored in our bodies. And it comes out in ways that toxic habits, toxic thoughts, we seek validation or love or attention in ways that are not the way that we're supposed to. So it does become really like a coping mechanism, right? Where we start to compartmentalize these things and just trying to get through the day. So you got to get to the clearing in the field, so to speak, to actually be able to unpack that. Do you find that that's what you tend to do when you're going through traumatic things in your life?
I do. And also, I want to speak to that a little bit because for those of you who don't know, if you don't know me, you probably don't know, but I actually used to travel and speak and share my story of an abusive relationship, right? But mine was when I was in high school, all right? I was younger, middle and high school. And so I think what happens, and it's the same situation. I also worked in a domestic violence shelter for a while. It's the same situation, I think, with everyone talking about grieving the things that you thought you would have, right? I coined the term missionary dating, right? We missionary date. We try to fix the person. We see who they can be and believe that they can be that person. And we think we can pull it out of them. We can't. It takes something higher than us, right? So we missionary date and we think, oh, I can show them so much love and I can show them the truth. And if you're spiritual, I can show them the truth of Jesus and I can do all these things. And they will be who they were made to be. The only problem is they don't know that they need to be who they were made to be yet. They've not figured that out. And we're trying to change them, which is going to create resentment in that, first of all. So it's never going to be a healthy relationship because they're already going to resent you regardless of whether they're a healthy person or not, right? So there are multiple kinds of abuse and people think, oh, that's just abuse, right? There's mental, there's physical, there's verbal, there's spiritual, there's destruction of property. You have multiple kinds of abuse and obviously sexual too, but people don't put those into the categories of, oh, that's abuse. And so we think, I'm going to fix this person. I see who they can be. They have those amazing moments. They have those little glimpses of who they could be. And we see that and we think, yes, more of that, more of that. I'll try to make them more and more, only it doesn't work. So then when we leave, when we finally get the gumption enough to go, screw it, enough's enough. You've hit me enough. You've cussed me enough. You've whatever enough, right? I'm done and I'm going to walk away. Then people who've seen it for years are like, yes, she finally saw it and she's going to break free and this is awesome. And then they wonder why you're sad.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to be sad.
And you're not allowed to be sad.
Yeah.
Pull up those bootstraps, girl. Put your
Yep.
big girl panties on. We got to go and do this, right? And that's what we're told. And you need to be allowed to grieve what you thought you were breeding in that relationship. You thought you were breeding something healthy, even if it was contorted in your mind, right? You're the only person that thought anything was healthy there. No, nobody else saw it. But women need to be allowed to grieve in those situations, and men too. Bottom line, women are more abusive than men. Just putting that out there. We are manipulative. We twist things, and we do not do that in a very healthy way at all. And we are terribly abusive in relationships.
That's a hot take.
That's a hot take right there. That is a hot take.
But it's true.
It
Yeah.
is a hill I will die on, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
But you need to understand that just because you have it, don't mean you need to use it, honey. Like, and women do that. And we can go into a whole big debate on Ruth and Boaz and all that kind of jazz and stuff in the Bible. And Proverbs 31 is actually about Ruth and refers back to her in this. Anyway, that's real deep. We're not going to go that deep right now. Okay. But anyway, women need to be allowed to grieve. People need to understand that we are grieving the loss of what could have been, because regardless of whether it was that or not, it was that in our minds. That's what we were asking for. That's what we were hoping for. That's what we were praying for. And even though it could never be that, and we were just trying to missionary date or missionary marry or whatever the situation was at the time, right? It is a gap in it is a gap in the world. It is a gap in the relationship world. Let me put it that way. That you can grieve an unhealthy relationship because you hoped for more or you hoped for better. So anyway, sorry, that's a soapbox. I went off on that. But
I love it.
It's an issue. It's an issue.
I love that perspective too, because like you said, women can be just as toxic, and we don't talk about that a lot, of how we use that to get what we want or to manipulate to get what we want in relationships and things like that. And one of the things that I've worked with people in the past is those big emotions that come up. Because for me, especially in that particular season, because up until that point, that might have been one of the more difficult things that I've had to deal with. And so for me, I had a lot of shame around the failed relationship, the not being enough. Those were things where I was telling myself where I was just not enough to keep the relationship going or whatever, to help it flourish or whatever. So for me, it was a lot of that. And I had a lot of really big emotions around that. And those were the moments where it was hard to get up and even take a shower and feed myself, because there was days when my kids would be with their dad and I would be like, I'm not getting out of this bed. I don't want to, because that was the level of where I was at as far as my worthiness and things like that. So for me, understanding, and we always hear therapists and things like that say, sit with the emotions. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what that meant. I was like, what do you mean sit with the emotion? I'm depressed. I'm sitting here. I'm sitting with it.
I have something long enough. I think I am good. I've been sitting
get up and go
a lot of years before anybody knew who I was sitting with.
Exactly. So for me, I had to really, and this is what I kind of coach women on now, is how to feel those big emotions, how to witness them and allow them to be. Again, we hear these things, but we don't really know what that looks like. So for me, that was feeling the sadness of the relationship that I'd lost, feeling the sadness of the life that I was now faced with, feeling not that I was ungrateful for my children by any means, but that I was sad that I was not going to have whatever picket fence dream I thought I had in my mind. And having those big emotions of the shame that came up, or the unworthiness that I felt, having that come up and asking questions about it. That was something, get curious about it and ask it, what is this showing me? Even asking, where do I feel this in my body, can help you understand things a little bit better, depending on where you're at in this. So for me, understanding that two things can be true at the same time, right? That it was a good thing to leave this relationship and I can grieve this relationship. And sometimes we get that we don't think that two things can be true at the same time. My parents loved me deeply, but they did not do the best job raising me, or I lacked affection from them, but I know they cared for me, or my parents provided for me, but I didn't feel a lot of affection. Those two things can coexist. And too often, especially if you've gone through trauma, it's either or. They didn't love me because, and then that becomes your mindset, that black and white mindset. And what you realize is that you become addicted to these thought patterns. And we don't think of addiction as that. We don't think of addiction as the trauma dumping that we do on people, the complaining that we do,
Girl, get it, preach.
yeah, that constantly talking about if someone asks you how your day is and you immediately go into all the things that went wrong with your day and you can't think of a single thing that went right. That is a addiction that you have. And I had to call myself out on it and understanding that, yeah, I needed to talk about my relationship and how it made me feel and how toxic it was, but I was doing it in one of the most unhealthiest ways. And I was dumping all of this, but not really looking for what we've said this the other day of you keep asking for advice until you get the answer that you want. That's really what I was doing. was I was shopping for the person that was going to tell me what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Not what I needed to hear. But I appreciated the people that showed up to tell me what I needed to hear because eventually it sunk in and it stuck. And when you're in those moments and you don't think it's trauma, to be honest with you, in the moment of that toxic relationship, I didn't think it was a traumatic thing. I didn't think that this was something that was going to impact me as big as it did and send me on such a long journey to really unpack all of it. But it really can be. And that was something else I learned in this is there's, like I said earlier, the big traumas and the little traumas, but sometimes the little traumas, there's so many of them, then it becomes big trauma. And I think for me, that was something that was a piece of this puzzle was my entire life. I'd played it small and felt like I wasn't the one, if you will. I don't know any other way to say it, but I had to always fight for attention or affection. And that's what I ended up doing in this relationship. And then coming out of it, I was realizing, oh my gosh, this has been a pattern for me throughout my entire life. And it's still a pattern I have to watch for now because I can very easily slide back into those things because that's our tendency, right? To play with our minds want to keep us safe. So they'll slide right back into those old tendencies because that's what it knows.
And the old amygdala gets you every time.
Yes, absolutely. So being able to redirect your thoughts and your mindset and being able to have the self-awareness to notice those is really where you start to see change over time.
Yeah. And I want to speak to two things on that, piggybacking on what you said, which is two things can be true at the same time. My parents loved me and I didn't feel compassion or emotion or whatever from them. And we'll talk about taking thoughts captive. So first, let's talk about the parent thing. All right. And I'm going to come back to that. Let me go get more clothes and I'll be right back.
Join us for the second part of this conversation where we dive into parent relationships, taking our thoughts captive, and forgiveness. Bye.